So, I want to talk about some misconceptions around sex and how very often in some certain relationship dynamics, the importance on the sexual connection gets sort of misconstrued. Now, sex is a part of the intimacy umbrella, but it's not the only part, and it's definitely not where it starts. Intimacy starts outside of the sexual connection. And the problem is that with certain maybe attachment styles, personality styles, relationships that keep you from really getting your needs met, sex can kind of elevate to the top. So if you're in an emotionally destructive relationship, if you are with someone with narcissistic tendencies, if you are even with a dismissive avoidant, these are scenarios where your needs aren't getting met in an equal way across the board, and this creates a problem. So I want to dive into what this looks like and how we end up elevating sex to a place that it shouldn't be, and the damage that can actually do in keeping us from seeing reality and having the healthy relationship that you actually want. If you're new here, I'm Ketra Thompson, and what I do with my clients is I help them get to the root of the subconscious programming that's driving their unwanted behavior. So through custom hypnotherapy and mind coaching, relationship coaching, and some attachment style coaching, we create an entire system of reframing the subconscious beliefs and helping you implement this process in your real life. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can check out the link in the description below. And you can also set up a completely complimentary consultation call so that you and I can chat and we can get to the heart of what's going on with you, and I can make my best recommendations. Okay, so this issue of sex sort of not being in the proper place in a relationship is a pretty big deal. I've experienced some of this. I have lots of clients who have experienced this, and typically it's in the dynamic of something that really isn't healthy or balanced. And so when you're being starved of all of the other needs, like let's just take the 5 love languages, for example. I don't believe that that's accurate, the 5 love language thing, but I do believe that it's a good example of how we have all these different love languages, and some of them sort of rise to the top as our biggest needs. But the misconception in that whole concept is that we think we only need 1 or 2, and we actually need all of them. And there's way more than 5 love languages. And so when we're being starved of one, we tend to look for the other. And so I realized in relationships I've had, I prioritized certain love languages thinking those were my highest ones because I wasn't getting them. And then in a different relationship, it would be a different dynamic. I would be getting those ones, but I wasn't getting the other ones. And all of a sudden, those ones sort of rose to the top. And it's the same dynamic where you're going to focus on the point in which you're being starved. So let me start by saying that no one other person can meet all of your needs. It isn't possible. And sometimes that can get people stuck in a place of going, well, my expectations are just too high. I'm just too needy. And I don't believe that for 1 minute. In most cases, people's expectations are far, far too low when they're in one of these dynamics. And they just think that if I just could stop having needs, if I just didn't have any needs anymore, then there wouldn't be a problem. So the problem is me. And in reality, we aren't supposed to be in relationships that make us not have any needs, that make us shut down our needs or deny ourselves of our needs, because that's not healthy or fulfilling for either person. It should be mutual. It should be an interdependent relationship, and the beginning of building that intimate connection should start with the actual building blocks of intimacy, which I'm going to get into and give you very specifics on. But let me give you some examples with sort of the unhealthy relationship dynamic. So if you are in a relationship with someone with a lot of narcissistic tendencies, you're probably not getting a lot of your needs met. There's probably a lot of manipulation, a lot of bullying, a lot of my way or the highway, a lot of picking fights over nothing. And so you find yourself really depleted and exhausted. And the one area you kind of end up feeling like you can be enough in, or even loved in, because it's the one area they'll give to you in, oftentimes, not every time, not always in every case, is the sexual relationship you have with a partner like that. So during that time, you'll feel something. You'll feel some pleasure. You'll feel some connection, and you grab onto that moment like, ooh, okay, that like filled my cup a little bit, but really it was just like a couple of drops in a cup that's been empty. And so we tend to put a focus on it, thinking that it's really, really important. I need to have that thing. And that also goes for other dynamics as well. So the partner who's very withholding, the partner who doesn't sort of have that global aspect of creating connection and depth. So it can often happen even with a dismissive avoidant. And so with the dismissive avoidant relationship, there is not the bullying, like there isn't maybe the controlling behaviors. So it's not quite at that place where you would be with someone who has narcissistic tendencies, but it's void in other areas. So if you're feeling connected and loved and seen, and that person's being present with you in the sexual connection, then it's really easy to elevate that desire above the others because you feel something there. So let's talk a little bit about what it should look like and the mental blocks that might be keeping you stuck in these dynamics. So let's talk about the umbrella of intimacy. Now, this is a big statement and it's a little controversial, but you don't need sex to survive. You do need it to have a healthy relationship, but if there's a lot of other broken pieces in the relationship, fixing that intimacy between the two of you doesn't start with sex. It starts with a deeper connection on other levels. So one thing that I think people overlook a lot is really the necessity for each partner to have the ability to accept influence. Now, accepting influence means that we are willing to listen to our partner's perspective with openness and curiosity, and then we're willing to be self-reflective with ourselves long enough to go, oh, that does make sense. I can see how that might be a better path. Or maybe I can implement some of that suggestion with some of what I was already planning. Whatever that is, the ability to accept influence really only happens once the emotional trigger that comes up to stop it is dealt with. So if someone makes a suggestion or tries to give you feedback or input about something in your life or something in the relationship, and a big emotional trigger comes up in the other partner, then that person's going to get defensive. They're going to argue for their stance and they're going to push back. And it's because they're internalizing someone else's suggestions as a criticism of them. It's the I'm not good enough belief. I'm not enough. I'm not smart enough. I am not enough. And so when that's triggered in you, you tend to get defensive and you tend to get really reactive. And the other thing people tend to do, oftentimes, especially when you're dealing with an avoidant attachment style, is at that point, you might have the combination of the pushback, the bristling, and then total avoidance. The shutdown, the pull away, the get quiet, the stonewalling, going silent. And the problem is that we can talk about, oh, you should be able to accept influence. Oh, you should be able to communicate this way. Oh, you should be able to listen with curiosity. But these aren't things that you can just do if you have an underlying trigger. So the reason that underlying trigger is there is because there is an unhealed wound that is trying to protect you still. And our subconscious mind drives over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do. So if we can't get into our subconscious mind to deal with the trigger, we're going to keep reacting that way. And hypnosis is really the only effective, quick way to get into the subconscious mind, which is why it's so incredibly powerful when it's custom, when it's done in a very purposeful, deep way. And so obviously I'm partial to that, but it's part of the reason I love it so much is because then we can get to the heart of that. And so when we talk about the intimacy umbrella, I guess if I had to pick one thing that's the start is dealing with the fears and subconscious programs that are keeping you in defense mode, keeping you being reactive, keeping you making assumptions about this other person, keeping you from being vulnerable, keeping you from stepping into real-time vulnerability, which is oftentimes something like this. If you were really in real-time vulnerability and you were telling someone about your day, you wouldn't just give the details of, here's what I did. I went to lunch with this person and work was busy. You would go another step further. I went to lunch at this place and here's why I went. And we were really excited about it because we heard really good reviews. That's great, but that's not vulnerable sharing either. It's one more step below that. Vulnerable sharing would be like this. I went to lunch with so-and-so and we were super excited to go there because everyone's been talking about it and we hadn't been there yet. And so I was really excited and I was super glad to meet with her and catch up. But honestly, while I'm telling you this, I feel a little bit nervous because I know that I said I was not going to spend so much going out to eat and I feel like maybe you're going to judge me. That's vulnerable sharing. And to be able to get to that point, those internal fears of judgment, of criticism, of someone saying something to you that makes you feel like not enough, those have to be dealt with so you can step into that. So in the umbrella of intimacy, we start with honesty, openness, vulnerability, curiosity, asking questions of the other person, wanting to understand them more, and then also wanting to share more of ourselves because it cannot go one way. And there's a lot of relationships where someone is a real giver and they give and they give and they give. But if someone tries to give back to them, they don't want anything to do with it. They back way off. Oh, no, I'm fine. I don't need anything from you. And that's a really unhealthy way to be as well. You need to be able to give in vulnerability and in connection, and you also need to be able to receive it. So in a toxic relationship where you might really be dealing with emotionally destructive person or, behavior traits, oftentimes there is one person that's a giver. Giver. The other person is taking. And it doesn't mean that you can't receive love. In some cases, that's the case. But in those situations, it mostly means that you're not going to get it. And this is where you end up elevating sex because it's the one place that you can get something. And I think that there's sort of the stereotype, I know, that, men are the ones who want more sex and women don't. And while that is true, there are so many women that are sex starved. I did another video. I'll try to link it here, that is all about the sex-starved wife. And there's a lot of men who create a distance and avoidance by not having sex. So it is not a single gender issue. And the thing I want to kind of touch on here the most today is that it's not ever the heart of the issue. If you are with someone, if you're married, and that person is never having sex with you, sex isn't the problem. The problem is that you aren't cultivating the other parts of intimacy under that umbrella that lead to safe, connected, vulnerable sex. And I think this is something we do. We ask sometimes our partner, what do you need from me? And I think it's a good question. I tell my clients to ask that as well. But the problem is oftentimes your partner doesn't know what they need from you. They don't know why they feel disconnected from you. They don't know how to fix it. And there's some chemical things going on where we don't have enough vasopressin in our body if we aren't problem solving together, if we aren't deeply communicating and connecting. And so if we don't have that, then the oxytocin from the sex isn't really doing it for us. So if you ask the average person, they're not going to be able to tell you that. They just go, I don't know. I don't have time for that. So there's different aspects to this. Maybe they don't allow themselves to let go and have pleasure, but maybe also they don't have the other needs met in their life that would lead them to feel safe and comfortable moving into that level of vulnerability with their partner. So if you're starting at the point of bitching about not having sex, you're starting at the wrong place. You've got to start with all the other stuff under the intimacy umbrella. accepting influence, curiosity, daily check-ins, communicating, asking questions, sharing vulnerably, being honest about what's going on inside of yourself. And part of that is really hard because our first language is actually feelings. It's not words. When we're a baby, we feel that we need a diaper change and we cry about it and we get what we need. We don't have words to express that. But over time, what happens is we get disconnected from those feelings and we don't know what they mean anymore. And so we're not meeting our needs in real time and we're not communicating our needs to our partner because we don't even know what they are. And so in my program, that has been a huge part of it. Reframing the subconscious programming that's driving the triggered behaviors, the reactivity, the defensiveness, the shutdown, the pullback, and reconnecting with your feelings so that you can understand what they're telling you, meet your needs in real time, communicate your needs in real time, and stop the backlog. Because when we don't know what we need or we aren't communicating day after day after day after week after month after year, there's this big pileup that happens and it creates resentment, and then we don't even know where to start. So we've got to deal with those things and start being able to communicate in a healthy way once the triggers are dealt with on that deep subconscious level. So what you can start doing today, I'm going to give you some very clear, actionable things that you can start doing on your own. You can start using your voice with people you trust. And it can be very simple things like if, a group of people are saying, hey, let's go to eat. Where does everyone want to go? Your default might normally be, I don't care anywhere. And you truly don't care. When that's the case, you want to stop and say, but if I was going by myself, what would I choose? And forcing yourself to come up with an answer. Then you share that with the group, knowing that you don't care if they don't pick that place, but you start using your voice to share your preferences. Share them with your friends when they say, hey, you want to go to lunch? What sounds good? Or whatever it is. I don't care your preferences about what you think about certain vehicles or anything. Just start using your voice with the people you trust. And then step into sharing with the people you trust about struggles that you might be having, things that come up for you. I'm having a rough week. Here's what's going on. I know you can't fix it. I just wanted to share. The more you start doing that with people you trust, the more you're going to train your body and mind to realize that it's okay. I'm safe, that the whole world didn't come crashing down because I shared something vulnerable. So that's a longer process, an ongoing process, but it is an important part. So that is a really good place to start. And if you do have one thing that you've elevated, like the sexual connection, where you just go, oh, but the sex was just so great with us. You need to back way up from the situation and look at it with a global perspective. Okay, sex was great, but what about everything else? Could I share vulnerably? Could I express needs? Could I have my opinions respected? Was there a level of curiosity? Was I emotionally safe? Did I really enjoy the time that I spent with this person that wasn't sexually connected? Did we laugh together? Was there an ease and flow with the way we communicated? Or was it the opposite? When you hear the garage door open and your whole body tenses up and you think, oh, I don't know what version of them I'm going to get today. Was it that? Because if that's the case, no amount of great sex is going to overcome the lack of these other things that will starve you to death. And again, I want to reiterate, you cannot have one person meet all your needs. But in order to have a deeply connected, intimate relationship, you have to be willing to share vulnerably, even if you don't do it perfectly. And you have to have the safety that the other person is willing to allow you to be human and to not do it perfectly. So even conflict is a good thing, but how you repair the conflict is what matters. If you're still trying to hurt the other person because you're hurting, then you've got a lot of subconscious programming that's trying to protect you in a way that is no longer working. Those programs are there for a reason. That subconscious programming might have kept you safe as a kid, but it's not doing it anymore as an adult if it's still running on autopilot like most of us are. So again, if you'd like some help to really get rapid transformation and do that deep subconscious work, check out that link in the description below. I'd love to chat with you. And as always, if this content resonates with you, click like and subscribe so you can be notified every time I post a new video. And until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.